Good morning, Emily. It's nice to finally meet you. Thank you for taking your time today to sit down with me. Would you mind
Absolutely.
introducing yourself to the Informs membership?
I would be happy to. Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Tucker. I'm an assistant professor here at Clemson in the IE department. I also have a courtesy appointment in the School of Health Research, and I do a lot of work related to resilient social good, healthcare, reducing shortages, things like that.
Cool. And how long have you been an Informs member?
Oh, a while now, since the beginning of grad school. So I think that would have been 2015, about 7 years now.
Cool. And how did you decide to enter the ORMS field? How did you get where you are today?
Oh, I just love OR. It's been a little bit of a winding road. I was talking to a mentor my first year of college, and I was talking about how much I love math and making things better. And she recommended I think about industrial engineering as a way to combine those two ideas, and jumped into it, loved it, got to go to a couple conferences and was so inspired by the work that folks were doing as operations researchers, making the world better, and decided to make a career of it. And I couldn't be happier. I feel so welcomed by the community, and it's great to be a part of Informs.
Great. I hear that a lot. People choosing industrial engineering as someone who loves the math and solving problems, and that seems to be a good fit for everyone that enjoys that type of thing.
Absolutely.
So you recently started your job at Clemson and completed your PhD. So two things there. One, tell us what it was like to complete your PhD at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic.
It was very weird. It's very weird. Most of the work itself was done prior to the pandemic really hitting. So I was in Michigan at the time, and Michigan was hit very, very hard by the early effects of the pandemic. So I had submitted my dissertation to the committee, which you do 2 weeks ahead of time. And in that 2-week period between the submission and the defense itself, the university shut down, the entire world changed. No one really knew how to use Zoom or Blue Jeans or stuff at that point. So we all had to learn.
Yeah.
So it was very chaotic, to be honest, but my committee was great. My advisor, Mark Daskin, was incredibly supportive, and yeah, it ended up going relatively smoothly, all things considered.
That's good. Did you have to defend it virtually as well, or is that I'm not sure of the timeline of PhD.
Yeah.
So you submit it and then defend it, right? So you had to do that virtually too. I guess that was probably weird as well.
Yes. I think I was one of the very first people to defend virtually, and that's so normal now.
Yeah.
But it just hit at such a weird time that we were all trying to figure things out. I had a pre-call with my parents, like, okay, how does this work? Let's make sure the video is working. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
But yeah, so so defended virtually. It went well, I passed, so life is good.
Obviously, yes. Okay. So then my second question is, how did you decide on picking your career in academia versus going into industry after you completed that wacky PhD defense?
Yeah, I was on the fence for a long time. I got a chance to work in industry for a couple years prior to my PhD. I worked at a research institute and loved the work, doing a lot of healthcare modeling for companies and the CDC and otherwise. And so I always thought I would go back. I went to get my PhD so that I could move up and lead projects in that area, and thought I would go back to industry. And throughout my PhD, I really enjoyed working with students. I got to teach a class. I love the process of getting to work on a lot of different types of research projects, and dig in deep to different areas. So it was within the last couple years of my PhD, I started to think very seriously about whether academia was right for me. And I think what ended up being the deciding factor was this question of, okay, do I want to work with folks who are already trained as operations researchers in industry, or do I want to lead a team of folks where one of the primary goals is development of their skills and abilities and helping launch their careers through research and teaching and other service roles? And decided I really like the developmental aspect of being a professor and really supporting folks coming up through the field, which I think is always the case, even in industry, but that focus in academia, I find really inspiring. And so decided to try, and really grateful to have had the opportunity to choose and really enjoy being a professor.
That's great. Do you have any general advice for current ORMS students, or have you had to, do you have, are you an advisor yet? I don't know. Again, don't know how.
Yeah.
Okay, so have you had to answer the question for your students who are looking to pick a career, and what would you tell them?
Oh, yeah. I love getting to chat with students and give advice. I sort of view it as sort of like one of those fountains, which you sort of pour into. So many folks have poured into me. And so I actually wrote this one down just so I remembered. But one of the things someone told me at one point was finish things. A lot of times when we're working on research, stuff can you get really excited, and the beginning parts of a project are always the most fun, but sort of actually getting it over the finish line, submitting that paper, submitting that proposal, whatever it is, getting it off of your computer and into the world, that's incredibly important. So I'd say, number one, finish things. I like to read broadly. There are definitely areas I go very deep into, which is important when we're doing research. But the more that you can pepper in ideas from other subdisciplines within OR or MS, or even other disciplines entirely, I think can bring in new ideas and keep things fresh. And the third is to remember context. And I so badly wish I could remember who told me this, but I think it's good advice, so I'll share with you anyway. It's that a grad degree doesn't need to be your life's work, but rather preparation to be your life's work. And I think in grad school, there's this immense pressure of this has to be the best thesis or dissertation. This sort of is going to define my career. And I think it's helpful to remember context that it doesn't. Like, it's great if it does, but really, if you're gaining the skills and ability that you can use throughout your next 30, 40, 50-year career, that's a big win. And I think take some of the pressure off. Grad school is hard enough. Just dig in, do the best you can. And yeah, looking forward to successful career for you, yes.
Yeah, that's good advice for any field too. And so can you tell us what was easy about your transition from student to junior faculty member, and maybe something that was a little bit more difficult in your transition?
Yeah, ooh, maybe I'll start with the hard first. We've talked some about COVID, and definitely starting in COVID times was really tricky. Our teaching modality changed a bunch of times. There are several colleagues I didn't see in person for quite a while.
Right.
Just everything is up in the air and very uncertain. But as optimizers, OR folks, I mean, we're used to dealing with complicated environments and uncertainty, so you just kind of step into it.
Yeah.
My colleagues were so supportive, and the students are great. So it was difficult, but not terrible, you know. It went well, all things considered.
So you started your job virtually.
I did, yes.
Your first teaching was virtual to virtual students. Wow.
It was yeah, it was tricky. Sort of the end, that semester I taught like a senior undergrad master's class. And yeah, so it's very tricky sort of coming into that, not knowing exactly what they know, and everyone has black screens, and which is great. I'm totally supportive of that. But yeah, that difficult teaching, but it went fine. So.
Wow. And then, sorry, I'm kind of throwing some new stuff at you here.
I love it.
When you then, are you fully in person now, I assume?
We are.
So when that transition happened, did you have to kind of like start over, or were you already enough into some classes and, you know?
Yeah, I think, yeah, course-wise, it was sort of just kind of continuing on the material, but I think in terms of delivery, it felt very, very different, especially because we were virtual, and then it was a hybrid, and then a hybrid more in person, and then in person.
Yeah.
And so delivery was just so different. But I appreciate how flexible everybody was. So it was strange though, as I think a lot of folks have experienced, but starting in that was hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay. So what about the easy part of your transition?
The easy part. I think part of it is, or a lot of it is, just why I wanted to be a professor in the first place. Sort of doing interesting research, starting new projects, and building the team that I get to work with. Yeah, I was really excited. That's I mean, a big reason why I wanted to be a professor, to be able to do this kind of work. And a PhD, you focus so deeply on one project for so long that it was really exciting to have the opportunity and the resources and collaborations and all of these things to be able to look at maybe similar themes of projects, but in very different lights, and get to work on different things. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And finding the right students has been quite easy at Clemson. I mean, Clemson students are awesome, as are OR students all over at all of our Informs related universities. But it's been a lot of fun, kind of working with great grad students and yeah, partners in the community, finding collaborators. I've been really grateful for the opportunities.
Great. Can you talk about the research you're working on right now?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I think a lot about what it means for social good and access and things like that to be resilient. And so how do we get goods and services to people consistently, in a stable way, as well as equitably. So there's a couple research projects which I can highlight. I have this outstanding PhD student, Martha Sabogal, who is doing some work with global pharmaceutical supply chains and studying ways to make distribution of medications more equitable. We saw very extreme examples of this when it comes to COVID vaccine distribution. And so we're starting to see that publicly. Unfortunately, this is not the only drug that happens. And so how do we change the underlying mechanisms to make that more equitable in the long term? So Martha's doing some nice work there. Another perhaps example project, we have a collaboration with some folks in Parks Rec and Tourism Management here at Clemson. And Anissa Young, who's a great master's student, is helping lead the modeling effort on when we are to install new green spaces and parks and things, how do we do so in an equitable manner, considering that we have these historic inequities that very much affect the way communities are designed and lived in? And so how can we use OR to combine lots and lots of different data sources with community participation and all these types of things in order to make life better for folks in local communities? And so we see sort of the large scale and the small scale, but these ideas of access, equitability, things like that, I think are themes that sort of persist in our research group.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's really interesting. Two very different topics, but with an underlying theme of, equity. Yes. And using OR to help all of that. So it's just another example of how OR can help in very different ways.
Yep, absolutely.
So you have been involved in several groups and communities at Informs. The list includes the Health Application Society, the Junior Faculty Interest Group, Minorities Issue Forum, Optimization Society, and more, as well as a previous editorial member of the ORMS Tomorrow team. So we have worked together before. Yeah. Why do you find this volunteer work so important, and how do you find time to do this?
Oh, I think both excellent questions. I may have mentioned earlier in this discussion, but I really value Informs as a community, that we have folks from all different backgrounds, all different types of institutions coming together, sort of within this concept of how do we use ORMS to make things better. And so through that, since the beginning of grad school to now, and I'm imagining for a long while in the future, sort of it's a way of being engaged with colleagues. And that takes effort, and community needs to be intentional. And the ways I think people interact with communities changes over time and with roles and things like that. But so many people have poured into me, whether that's sort of informal memberships. The number of times a senior member of Informs has gotten coffee and given advice is huge, to some of these society and fora and community memberships. That's been really impactful, to very formal, well, relatively formal, like colloquia. I attended the new faculty colloquium at one point, and the future faculty, I forget what the term is, but things like that. I've just been, so many people have poured into me and others, that it seems just a natural fit to pitch in when I can. And again, that changes over time, and I don't do all the things all of the time. But thankfully, don't do that. Other advice, don't do that. Good advice. But yeah, when there's opportunities, I like to, and I have the availability, I like to pitch in. So someone gave me this advice. Oh, and I wish I could remember who it is. I mean, it's just sort of living in this community, but someone said at one point, the better you can integrate these three aspects of being an OR scholar, sort of this research, teaching, if appropriate, and service, like together, rather than viewing them as three separate silos, the more sustainable that will be. And so that's something I've really tried to emphasize throughout different types of service roles, sort of engaging in things that I have the time to do, and it will sort of reverberate and resonate in other areas of my professional career, I think is helpful, let's say. So I think it's a mix of things, but I try to say no at times. Sort of
that's a problem too, yes. Well, we appreciate all the volunteering you've done for us. And I really like what you said, that community is intentional. Keep that one with me. So you mentioned the new faculty colloquia, and then was the early career? No, that's a practitioner one, but another one that you've been to, I suppose. Which Informs events are you planning to attend this year, or you're most excited for?
Yeah, I just had a chance to attend the Informs Optimization Society meeting a couple weeks ago. It was here in Greenville, South Carolina, locally, and that was really exciting to get to see a few hundred folks, all who are excited about optimization and doing cool work. It was really exciting to host locally. Sort of upcoming, I'm really looking forward to the annual meeting in the fall. I had a chance to attend the hybrid meeting last year, which was great. Again, very strange in our COVID times. But it was great, and looking forward to hopefully more of us being able to get together in the fall. I have some students who are going to hopefully present some work, at least submit some abstracts, and just, looking forward to it.
Did you attend the hybrid in person or virtually?
In person, yes.
How was that? I was actually a virtual attendee. So.
Nice. I think it was relatively good.
Yeah.
The cons definitely had some 6 a.m. sessions had to attend, which was that was rough. But it was nice to talk to people, and it felt more open than most annual meetings, oddly, because there were so few people there. Relatively, everybody wanted to talk to each other, and so I got to meet a ton of people. It was a win.
Yeah,
and I appreciate how Informs has sort of just been so safe in the way that they have sort of planned events. That's a hard line to walk, and I just kudos to the organization for walking that.
Good. We appreciate that. So if we were sitting here in a year from now celebrating what a great year it's been for you, what would we be celebrating?
Oh, I would love to be celebrating student successes. So would love for a couple of the students to have paper acceptances that we can cheer on, a couple MS thesis defenses. So Aisha and Brittany, I believe, are defending in the next year. So I'm very excited about the two of them. Oh, and Anissa as well. So a few of them, and just progress in general, sort of taking these steps to get better at what we do. And then, if we're celebrating a grant or two on my end, that's not the worst thing. So
good. Anything personally you would want to happen in the next year, not work related?
I think, so one thing I really like about living down here, so I'm in Clemson, the upstate South Carolina area. We have a lot of lakes around, and I love being on the water. So I plan to take out my kayak. I have a tiny sailboat, so hopefully getting better at that, not capsizing all too much. That would be good.
Good accomplishments, yes. So you like to kayak. What else do you like to do for fun? What does a typical weekend look like for you?
Ooh, really depends on the weather. So if it's nice, I'll definitely be outside hiking, things like that. I live somewhat within an hour of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So whenever I get a chance to go out there and go hiking, I definitely do that. Get to see some friends, maybe work a little bit on the weekends, stuff like that. But I like to read. Yeah, a mix of things. So,
what's your idea of comfort food?
Oh, I do love a variety of comfort foods. Probably my go-to these days are donuts. There's just something about them. And I do have to say, if we're bragging a little bit, we have a great donut shop locally, and the owners do know me by name. Granted, they think my name is Katie, which is not, but that's okay.
But they're
Um,
consistent. They consistently call you Katie.
exactly.
So just stick with that.
Yep.
Is that also your Starbucks name on?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Very good. So which music artist would you have write the soundtrack to your life? I think this question is really fun.
Oh, that is a fun question. Oh, I love it. Just kind of bopping around. I would love to see maybe a collaboration between ABBA, Phil Collins, and maybe throw in some Old Crow Medicine Show. I think that would be a pretty sweet mix.
Very eclectic. I can just see your life in Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
My daughter loves ABBA.
Oh, it's so good.
Yes. Well, that is all I have for you today. I really appreciate you talking to me.
Thanks so much, Kara. This has been a pleasure. It's great to get to know you a little bit too. And
Yeah.
thanks so much for the invitation.